Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? And hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. And of course, this is going to be part two of the fight card that I'm going to review, of course, of the big boxing card. And of course, the fights that I'll be talking about in this particular one, of course, is that of Devin Haney versus that of Brian Norman Jr., and also that of Abdullah Mason versus that, I believe his name was Sam Noakes, I believe the British fighter who was undefeated. But, anyways, that being stated, let's basically talk about it. And of course, for those of you that did not hear about the results, Devin Haney ended up getting the victory over that of a Brian Norman Jr., and he did it unanimously. Now, of course, some of the scorecards were a little bit mixed. I think one scorecard had it about 9 rounds to 3. Another one, I think, even had it wider than that. Another one maybe had it, 8 rounds to 4 or something like that. To be honest with you, I did not think that this fight was relatively close. I thought that maybe, Brian Norman Jr. won about 3 rounds. Maybe if you were being a little bit generous, I thought that he had no answers for a Devin Haney whatsoever, especially after he knocked him down in round two, which of course is what you're seeing right here. But anyways, the point overall is of course, for those of you that remember, I ended up very, very tentatively and very razorly picking that of a Brian Norman Jr. I thought that perhaps Devin Haney, of course, may have a problem moving up in weight, but of course, this is now the second time where I've seen a fighter, move up in weight. Of course, also talking about Crawford, where I thought that maybe they were going to have a little bit of an issue, and they basically appear to have no issue whatsoever. Now, what I also will state, and I know that a certain amount of people overall probably are not going to like this, both of those fighters also appear to be on the snack program. Now, could it be that maybe overall that everything is on the up and up there? Could it be that maybe something is not going on there? I mean, maybe. But what I will personally state is this: do I personally believe that more than likely that with the snack program that there probably is a little bit extra something special, within that of their meal programs? Yes, personally I do. And I understand that, you have you have these guys like Timothy Bradley, overall people stating that, well, the supplements are good and all that other stuff, and people take it around the world and they're not testing positive, right? But Timothy Bradley, what he doesn't necessarily understand is that they're not giving Devin Haney and they're not giving guys overall like that of a Terrence Crawford or Virgil Ortiz. And of course, let me not forget Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez, who also appears to be with the Stack program. They're not giving fighters like that the supplements that they're selling on TV. They're giving them overall top of the line PEDs that, overall, once again, they do certain things called microdosing to where more than likely it is getting out of your system or it is undetectable by the time overall, by the time it comes to that of the random drug testing or by the time it comes to probably test it. Now, of course, certain people say, well, how can you do that with random drug testing? Well, there's certain ways overall, once again, that if you do it in certain doses and they have a certain science behind it overall to where, once again, it can kind of pop out of your system or remain somewhat undetectable for a certain amount of time because they may only do a certain amount, for, a decently long while. Anyways, that being stated, I don't want to get into that too much. Do I believe that more than likely that there probably is something with that of the stamp program? Yes, I do. I've always stated that. Victor Conti, of course, is someone that was with that, or he was caught, being a top supplier of PEDs. And he has stated before that he knows how to not get caught and that overall that he was very good at not getting caught and knowing how to get past certain drug guys like that of USADA and certain things like that. Not to mention that he may be working with USADA anyway, or that they may be. But the point overall is this: do I believe that there probably is something there? Yes, I do. And the fact that a lot of those fighters appear to be, moving up in weight, they're not losing any speed. They appear to have even more strength than before, and their stamina also appears to be somewhat relatively the same. To me, it definitely is suspicious for any fighter that is in there. But that's not the main reason why Brian Norman lost this fight. The reason why Brian Norman ended up losing this fight is because he had the complete wrong style for that of a Devin Haney, and I pretty much had stated that within that of my fight prediction. But the reason why I thought that he still may just have enough to win this fight is because A, I did not know, even possibly with the snack program, how Devin Haney was going to handle that of the weight class of 147. Even though it's very obvious taking a look at this fight that Haney was absolutely humongous. It's very obvious that he should have been at this weight class a while ago. And overall that Devin Haney is someone that, even when you take a look at him at 140, he's been rehydrating at about 165, I believe, for about a couple of fights. So Devin Haney is someone that can fit at the welterweight division. But Brian Norman Jr. is someone that he didn't lose this fight because of size. He didn't lose this fight overall, in my view, because of any unfair advantage. He lost this fight because he does not have very good feet. He does not move his head off the center line very well. And he was relying a little bit too much on just lunging in there and trying to get certain offense off when Devin Haney was not running into certain traps of his within that of the mid range. Which I stated, of course, within that of my fight prediction that there was a very big possibility of that happening. But it depended on what version of Devin Haney that I was going to see. If it was the Devin Haney that I had seen from the Ryan Garcia fight, or possibly even from the Jose Ramirez fight, I was not quite sure if it was going to be enough in order to win. But I stated that if it was the Devin Haney from the Regis Prograis fight, I would pick Devin Haney to beat that of a Brian Norman because I don't think that he has the style to beat him. And Devin Haney, I'm not going to claim that he was quite as good as, say, that of the Regis Prograis performance. I think that he still looked a little bit tentative to throw within that of the first part of the fight. And in that of the first round, it looked like my prediction was somewhat correct. It looked like Devin Haney was getting rocked by jabs, and it looked like he was having a little bit of problems. But Devin Haney then found the groove of things in round two, and he knocked him down within that of the second round. And let me also say this about Devin Haney. No matter my suspicions about him on the stack program or not, there's been many people claiming about Devin Haney for a while that he does not have punching power and that he also does not have a chin. I've never personally agreed with either of those things. Now, do I think that Devin Haney has quote unquote A+ level power? No, he doesn't have A+ level power. But if you are not careful with him, overall he can possibly surprise you and knock you on your ass, just like we've seen with that of a Regis Prograis. And Regis Prograis has a very, very good chin, at least according to my recollection. I do not remember him getting knocked down, I believe, against that of a Josh Taylor. And I also don't remember him getting knocked down against certain other shot fighters as well. Now, he did get knocked down a couple of times, I believe, over Jack Catterall, but that was after that, after Devin Haney pretty much had completely tarnished him. So, I mean, it is what it is. But that being stated, Devin Haney showed that, he probably had around the same level of power that I thought that he had. And Brian Norman Jr., of course, got caught with a great right in between the guard, and it knocked him on his ass. And he's very lucky that he was not stopped within that round. So, I mean, it is what it is. But that being stated, in my personal view, I did not even find this to be an A+ level performance from that of a Devin Haney. But Brian Norman basically showed all the weaknesses that I had seen from him within that one fight, I believe, overall. I do not remember the dude's name, but he fought this one, undefeated fighter, not too long ago. I think he was undefeated, who was a quote-unquote taller, slicker fighter. And it was a very tough fight for Brian Norman. Like, he barely won the fight. I believe that he won the fight like 7 rounds to 5 or, maybe 6 rounds to 4 or something like that, however many rounds the fight was. And he really did not land that many punches. He only landed about 54 punches or 49 punches throughout the whole entire fight. So I thought Brian Norman would, try to make some adjustments. And I think that he was trying to. But once Devin Haney ended up knocking him down and actually showing that he could hurt him, basically all that shit went out the window. And I think that Brian Norman truly believed that Devin Haney was not going to be able to hurt him. And as soon as that ended up happening, he went into panic mode and pretty much knew that there was not going to be able to, be much that he was going to be able to do. And Brian Norman Jr., pretty much against that one fighter, what he had shown me is that in order to get in, because he does not have the best of feet, he does not really know how to create offense well enough in order to get in. He kind of just lunges in there and throws certain punches, and kind of hopes that he's going to get you. And I always knew that there was an opportunity that if Devin Haney ends up tying him up, and that if he ends up throwing consistently throughout this fight, if Brian Norman does not start his offense or create his own offense, which is exactly what ended up happening within this fight, then Devin Haney was more than likely going to win this fight. So Brian Norman Jr. basically did none of the things that I said that he was going to have to do in order to win this fight. But I'm not really super surprised about that because that's just the fighter that he is. And I thought that Devin Haney, that I thought that he was still going to be a bit tentative, and it turns out he was. But Brian Norman Jr. overall just had the complete wrong style to beat him, and Devin Haney was a little bit more powerful and a little bit better than I think Brian Norman Jr. thought that he was going to be, and I think that he was a little bit better than what I thought he was going to be. Or that, Devin Haney even fighting at this level, which in my view was, I think that Devin Haney had about a B+ to A- level performance. Now, I know certain people may say, well, how could you say that? Devin Haney just moved up a weight class and, he just completely dominated the welterweight champion, right? But does anyone take a look at Brian Norman Jr. and say, wow, that guy's, he's someone overall like that of a Jerome Tennis? To be quite honest with you, I'm not even sure if he would beat Stanionis. But I mean, we'll see about that a little bit later on. But the point overall is that Devin Haney, in my view, this was not even the best performance of his career, and he still was able to make Brian Norman Jr. look like shit. There was no reason overall, once again, to look that bad unless there was just no way that you were ever going to win the fight in the first place. And like I stated, Brian Norman, he was going to have to create his own offense. He was going to have to be first. He was never first throughout this fight unless it was the first round. There were certain rounds that he ended up putting on a little bit later on, but there was nothing that he did in order to beat Devin Haney. He did literally none of the things in order to beat Devin Haney. He did not move his head off the center line. He did not change his levels very well. His feet, of course, were, very slow. He lunged in there, not creating his own offense, and he had no return fire when Devin Haney ended up clinching him. So, I mean, the point overall is that, Brian Norman pretty much had fought, the same way that he had fought when he fought that one fighter. I remember the dude's name, Quentin Randall. He pretty much had fought the complete same fight that he had fought against Quentin Randall. And I stated that if he was going to fight that same way, he was going to lose this fight. Because there was no way that you can fight there, have no adjustments, and he had no adjustments ever since that fight. I thought overall that he would make certain adjustments, but no, he made none. But very good job on Devin Haney. He now is an official three-weight division champion. Who do I believe is going to, who do I believe he should fight next? I mean, it's kind of up to him. Of course, there is the Ryan Garcia fight that is available. There's the Rolly Romero fight. There are other champions, I believe, at that weight class. Would I favor, someone like a Rolly Romero or a Mario Barrios over that of a Devin Haney? No. I would not favor either of those fighters over him. I think that, of course, Mario Barrios probably could give him a tougher fight, but I don't think that Mario Barrios nor Rolly Romero have ever been great fighters. It's going to be very interesting to see where Devin Haney goes from here because I'm not really quite sure who he can fight next. That would be a quote-unquote humongous fight. Because Gervonta Tank Davis, that fight does not seem like it's going to happen anytime soon. Shakur Stevenson, I mean, maybe, but that will probably be later on down the line. It's going to be interesting, and perhaps maybe we can even see a run at 154. Now, if he does end up fighting someone like a Jerome Butsenis or that overall of a Virgil Ortiz, do I see him beating either of those fighters? No. Those fighters, in my view, are too sound overall with that of their boxing prowess and with that of their boxing technique, and they just have too much on their side. Not only are they great athletes, and not only is Virgil Ortiz also a snack, but when it comes down to it overall, those fighters are just too skilled and two-dimensional for that of a Devin Haney. Devin Haney is someone that I think is a very, very good fighter on the outside. I think that he's someone that is better than what a lot of people give him credit for, but he does have a certain amount of holes within his game. He is not someone that I would say moves his head always within that of the right ranges. He is someone that overall can keep his hands down, at certain times or being caught with that of his hands down. And he's someone that can be hit, but the thing is about Devin Haney is that he is skilled enough. He is an A-grade level fighter. And the thing that makes him so, basically, really hard, to kind of fight is because he has a very in and out type of style. He knows how to use his feet and he's very quick footed. He's someone overall that knows how to use lateral movement. And a lot of fighters do not know how to handle that. Now, when it comes to a fighter that finally does know how to handle that, I think that there's a possibility that Devin Haney can be, have a little bit more of a challenging fight. But I just don't really see a fighter, at least at the welterweight class, that really is going to be able to deal with that at least consistently. Maybe a fight with, Imantas Stanionis or something like that. That would be a very interesting fight, but I just don't know any other fighters at the current weight class that really would give him that much of a problem. I think there's one other welterweight champion there, but I don't really know his name. But congratulations to Mr. Devin Haney. He proved that, he was the better fighter. And on top of that, that Brian Norman Jr., that he really was a guy that pretty much was just going to be a blip on the radar. So congratulations to Mr. Devin Haney overall for winning this fight. Very, very great performance. And you have to give him a lot of credit. And I always give Devin Haney a lot of credit because even though I don't think that he's one of the 5 most skilled fighters in the world, I do think overall that he is someone that has a great resume for what he has done and someone overall that has pretty much been willing to get in the ring with any fighter out there. So I have to give him a lot of props. But that also being stated, great on Devin Haney for proving me wrong and stating or basically making a statement that he still has a lot left within the tank. So we'll see who he fights next. As for Abdullah Mason, versus that one British boy, Noakes, that fight really did not surprise me. I expected it to be competitive because Noakes is very good within the pocket, and of course, hitting certain fighters if they're going to stay within the pocket a little bit too long. And of course, we've seen moments of that, but Noakes is basically your standard overall, kind of British, level fighter to where he might have certain talents and he's powerful and he's got some technique, but he also has no head movement whatsoever. He does not move his head off the center line at all. And it made Abdullah Mason's job so much easier overall, whether he was in the pocket or within the range. And I pretty much predicted that Abdullah Mason was going to beat that guy because he had the better feet. He was someone that was going to have the quicker feet, the quicker punches. Pretty much the only way that Noakes was going to win that fight is if Abdullah Mason was standing in the pocket for too long with his hands down, which of course we did see quite a bit of within this fight. But Noakes did not have the speed, nor the power, nor really the skill in order to threaten him too much. And when Noakes' trainer finally gave him great advice saying jab and then get outside the range, he really didn't have a great answer for that. So even though, of course, Abdullah Mason, he has his faults, and he's not someone that I ever see becoming a top 10 level pound for pound fighter, he is someone overall that was talented enough to beat that guy. And he is very talented. He's someone that, does have very good boxing ability. He's a great athlete. That being stated, he does have a major, major problem with staying inside the pocket for a little bit too long and not returning his hands to his face. He has a major, major problem with that. And he's got to be very careful because that could cost him a fight one of these days. He is very talented, but I just don't know if I ever see him being on the level of guys like a Shakur or even a Devin Haney, just my personal view of it. But I mean, we'll see what ends up happening. I would love to see him, in the ring with some higher level guys. Apparently, Keyshawn Davis or whatever his name is, apparently he missed weight, so he ended up getting stripped of the title. At least that's what I heard. Or maybe he moved up a weight class, I'm not sure. But that being stated overall, of Abdullah Mason, he was relatively impressive, but he did show certain holes in his game, just my personal view of it. But, he was enough to beat that of a Noakes. A guy that is relatively talented, but a guy that, in my view, is going to be no higher than a B-level fighter. He just does not move his head. He does not have that much maneuverability. He's very dangerous, but he's not someone that's ever going to be on the level of an Abdullah Mason, in my view. So it is what it is. But anyways, those are my fight reviews. Great on Devin Haney and Abdullah Mason for their performances. And Devin Haney definitely has to return to my top 10 pound for pound list after this performance. Great, great performance by both gentlemen. But that being stated, that pretty much is about it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.